Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of any president.
He had the worst jobs record of any president. Well, it was a pandemic. He had the worst jobs record. Well, on MSNBC the other day, yesterday, we saw a complete and total, utter, destructive, tear-filled, blind-raged meltdown. We begin with Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi was does it get any friendlier than this? Nancy Pelosi on the set of MSNBC interviewed by Katy Tur. And she's trying to make the point, and I'll sum up the entire interview in this way. Trump bad, Biden good. Vote for us. And they think it's going to work again. So was she on there to talk about how great our national security is? Nope, can't. Was she there to talk about how great our foreign relations are right now? Can't. Was she there to talk about how we've got immigration and our southern border under control? Don't make me laugh. Was she there to talk about how things are so much better now because the price of goods and services are so much more affordable than before Joe Biden took over? Please. 12 to 20% compounded inflation over the last 3 years? No way. What about the housing market? Have you seen interest rates recently? No. She can't say any of that. Can she say that it's safe for you now to walk in a major city at any time of day, or to walk in her city of San Francisco without stepping in human feces, jumping over human debris of a criminal vagrant living on the street, or God forbid you fall down and hit yourself on a used hypodermic needle that's been left on the street? No, she can't say any of those things. So the only message is Trump is a monster. And watch what happens when Katy Tur gives her the slightest, the very slightest of pushback on her false narrative. Watch.
There's nothing in his performance, if that's the word we'll use, what he has done, that would indicate that he cares, prioritizes, or ever valued or did anything to support a democracy. And now on the ballot saying he should have immunity from whatever he might do. I mean, really, I have sympathy and respect for everybody who votes. I'm glad people vote. I know some of them will always reject those of us who might look different to them in leadership or the rest, and that's that. But there are those who have real legitimate concerns about immigration, globalization, innovation, and what does that mean for their job and their family's future? And we have to address those concerns. And Joe Biden is doing that, created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
He had the worst record of any president. We've had other concerns in our country. If you want to be an apologist for Donald Trump, that may be your role, but it ain't mine. And he has the worst.
Anybody can accuse me of that.
But let me just say, as a Speaker of the House, we put forth a $3 trillion bill. $3 trillion of investment in communities and the rest, and that stimulates the economy.
Oh, yeah. Don't you feel stimulated by all that money? It's what caused the inflation, and she's bragging about it. But was that not glorious? Can we just watch this again? And I'm going to break it down as Larry does, because there's a lot that I want to say. I can't tell you the discipline it took to not interrupt that clip, but I knew it was a minute and a half, and I knew we'd have time to go through it together. So let's do it together.
There's nothing in his performance, if that's the word we'll use, what he has done, that would indicate that he cares, prioritizes, or ever valued or did anything to support a democracy. And now on the ballot saying he should have immunity from whatever he might do. I mean, really.
You know, this is why Nancy Pelosi won't accept an interview with me. I would love to interview Nancy Pelosi or any major Democrat who tries to parrot this. The fact that he thinks he should have immunity for anything he might do. May I ask you, Madam Speaker, just real quickly, because I know you're a Democrat, you're an FDR Democrat. I've heard you call yourself an FDR Democrat, right? Franklin Roosevelt. Franklin Roosevelt rounded up American citizens of Japanese descent. They were rounded up purely because of their race and their ethnicity. And these were American citizens, even American citizens that were born here in this country. They could have been multi-generational, but because they were of Japanese descent, Franklin Roosevelt rounded them up, forced them to sell all of their possessions, took them from their homes, and put them in prison camps, hundreds of miles away from where they were for years during World War II. Should he have had immunity from that? And if so, why? Now, I want you to know, I think that FDR should have had immunity for that decision. It was the wrong decision. It was a terrible decision. History has judged him for that, sorta. Just like how Abraham Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War, unilaterally as the commander-in-chief, but it was wartime. And he made the decision, just like FDR did, that he felt he had to do that. And he should have been immune from any criminal prosecution for doing that as well. If you don't want to go all the way back to the FDR days, Madam Speaker, since, you were, 60, 70 years old back in the 40s? Let's do something more recent. Barack Obama, third day in office, ordered a drone strike, killing innocent civilians without any due process. It took them years to even admit to it and then ask forgiveness. American citizens were killed by Barack Obama via drone strike without any due process, without any arrest, let alone a prosecution or a trial. They were killed by Barack Obama, and he called it while he was using his war powers as commander-in-chief. Should he have had immunity from any criminal or civil penalties because of that? And I know you think he should have. So explain why. Because clearly you're in favor of some level of immunity. So the question now is, where does that immunity begin and end? Because Donald Trump, as president, believed that he was protecting the Constitution from a fraudulent election. You may disagree with him, just like people disagreed with FDR, with Japanese internment, just like people disagreed with Abraham Lincoln over habeas corpus, and just like people disagreed with Barack Obama over the drone strikes. Disagree all you want, but that's what he believed. Why should he not have immunity, but all those other presidents have immunity? I'll give you as much time as you'd like to answer that question. Please, Madam Speaker, go. This is why I'm never allowed to interview Nancy Pelosi. But there's more.
I have sympathy and respect for everybody who votes. I'm glad people vote. I know some of them will always reject those of us who may look different to them in leadership or the rest, and that's that. But there are those.
What does that even mean, by the way? I respect everybody who votes, and then she uses this gesture. But I know some of them, that's you, by the way. That's me. Some of them, they'll reject us every time because of the way we look. Well, I mean, the joke tells itself. But it's not because of how you look, Nancy, I promise you. It's because your ideas are contrary to the vision of our nation. But that's fine.
Who have real legitimate concerns about immigration, globalization, innovation, and what does that mean for their job and their family's future? And we have to address those concerns. And Joe Biden is doing that, created 9 million jobs in his term in office. Donald Trump has the worst record of job loss of any president. So we just have to make sure people know.
That was a global pandemic.
All right. So, and I do love it. And like I said, the slightest of pushbacks. In fact, I don't even think Katy Tur believes that it's an excuse for job loss, that it was a pandemic. I think she was just sort of doing a devil's advocate. Almost like, well, what do you say to the people who say that Trump's job loss was because of the pandemic and it wasn't his economic policies? In other words, what do you say to the people who believe the facts and the truth? Because we all know what the economy was like and the jobs market was like before the pandemic. We all know it. In fact, some would argue that that's why we had a pandemic. Because it was an election year and things were going a little too well. So Katy Tur does this devil's advocate thing and says, well, it was a global pandemic. And look at her face. Her first reaction is this: the shock and the fire-breathing, blood coming out of the eyes rage that you would even say that. And what is her response? Here, this is my favorite part of this entire thing. That this is her opportunity to shoot that down. Oh, a pandemic. Oh, let me explain exactly why you can't blame the pandemic. And what's her response? What's her answer to that?
He had the worst record of any president. We've had
to basically say the exact same talking point, but slower, louder, and angrier. That's it. That's all we got. He had the worst jobs record of any president. Well, it was a pandemic. He had the worst jobs record. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And then she goes on to call Katy Tur a Trump apologist. Katy Tur on MSNBC is Trump apologist. Let me explain exactly what that was. That has nothing to do with Katy Tur. Nancy Pelosi saying, if you want to be a Trump apologist, you go ahead. That was a warning shot. That was a signal. That was a flag being sent up the flagpole. It was the red flare being shot up so everybody could see. That was for Anderson Cooper. That was for George Stephanopoulos. That was for Kristen Welker. That was for whoever's on CBS these days, because who watches CBS? That was for Jake Tapper. That was for every other journalist or host of a TV show across the board. Don't you go there. Don't you even try it. You dare to try to equivocate the economy and say that the only problem with Trump's economy and the problems that we had in that final year of the economy was because of the pandemic, you might as well be a Trump apologist. That was to preempt the next one. That's what that was. Let's see. Let's see if anybody dares to go there. Let's see if anybody dares to actually say the obvious, logical truth. That things were great until the pandemic. The pandemic was China's fault. The lockdown was Anthony Fauci's fault and Andrew Cuomo's fault and the media's fault for forcing it because they were sure that people are going to die if not for you. And now, if you dare to say, in retrospect, we shouldn't have had the lockdown and that wasn't really Trump's fault, you're an apologist. You're a Trump apologist. And you will never work in this town again. This tactic is all they've got. But there's even more great meltdown. I mean, that's pretty good. But then you turn to the host of Nicole Wallace's show. Nicole Wallace, whose last claim to fame before she had this show on MSNBC was she was the brilliant mind behind convincing John McCain that Sarah Palin's first one-on-one exclusive interview should be with Katy Tur. That's who this is. It was her idea. And why did she give the interview to Katy Tur? Because Katy Tur was her old roommate. We're pals. She's not a partisan Democrat hack. She's going to play it right down the middle, fair and square. That's Nicole Wallace, who I believe, along with Steve Schmidt, the guy who ran the McCain campaign, who's like, he's Project Lincoln, right? He's Lincoln Project. He's like right there with Rick Wilson. Those two, I believe, and I'll never be able to prove it, so it's just an opinion. Go ahead and sue me. Nicole Wallace and Steve Schmidt, they sabotaged the John McCain campaign. It was always going to be a tough one for McCain against Obama. But I think there was a lane you could win it. And I think they sabotaged it. I think that they made more money by McCain losing than they would have by McCain winning. I mean, just look at her now. And look at the money the Lincoln Project brought in. Oh, they fell on their feet just fine. Just fine. All right, so here's Nicole Wallace warning her viewers about what might happen if Trump wins.
I've seen that toast a bunch of times, but it landed very differently this year because depending on what happens in November, 7 months from right now, this time next year, I might not be sitting here. There might not be a White House Correspondents' Dinner or a free press. While our democracy doesn't exactly fall apart immediately without it, the real threat looms larger. A candidate with outward disdain, not just for a free press, but for all of our freedoms and for the rule of law itself.
For the rule of law itself. Nicole, first of all, touch up the roots. Sorry, I had to say it. I'm petty. I'm not beneath that, but she does. She needs to touch up the roots, number one. Number two, if you're trying to tell me that electing Donald Trump means that you no longer have a show on MSNBC, and maybe even MSNBC itself gets shut down, you've sold me. Now that I think about it, you are a brilliant Republican political strategist, because that's a winning message right there. But number three, and throw in that there will be no more White House Correspondents' Dinner. Please. I want Trump for life if those are the conditions. But number three, and most importantly, if you really are concerned about the free press, if you really are concerned about the First Amendment, if you really are concerned about government control of the messages that you're allowed to receive, and publications, voices like ours here at Town Hall and everybody else on the platform that you're watching right now have a free, unencumbered ability to deliver the news and opinion directly to you. If that really is your concern, just look at recent memory. We've got two presidents, two administrations, two people. Which one of them has the best record right now when it comes to stifling free speech, when it comes to censoring the media, when it comes to pressuring social media companies to delete people's accounts and suspend them from being able to send and receive information? I mean, last I checked, it was Team Biden and the deep state operatives who supported Joe Biden, who worked directly with Twitter and with Facebook and with YouTube and with Google to silence people and shut people up. It was those guys who lied to keep the Hunter Biden story from taking off, who engineered the whole, this is a Russian propaganda operation about Hunter Biden's laptop 3 weeks before the election. They're the ones who censored and deleted the story from the New York Post on social media and bullied and pressured other media outlets from picking up the Hunter Biden story that the New York Post had. If you're really worried about the First Amendment, you know what, Nicole? It is a pretty clear choice between Trump and Biden. Because Biden's the one who's been stifling the media, stifling free speech, stifling the truth. But we've got one more meltdown, and it's a beautiful one. It's from old lizard head there, serpent head, James Carville. And he's got a message for the youth of America. Remember how we've been talking this whole show today about how Democrats and leftists' objections to the protests on college campuses are really rooted in the fact that they know they're going to lose, that they know that this is stacked up to destroy their party and Joe Biden. We're talking landslide for Trump if this stuff continues, everything that we're seeing. Well, James Carville knows his stuff. And he's got a message for these protesters. He's got a message for young people who are not real happy about Joe Biden right now.
Are you kidding me? Is this the United States of America? Is this the nation that was founded on the principle that no person is above the law? And then you tell these young people, if you don't get involved right now in this election, they're going to be involved in your life for the rest of your freaking life. And if Trump and Roberts and Alito and Gorsuch and Thomas and Leonard Leo and the Heritage Foundation, if they get a hold, there will be no government left. There will be no rights left. You'll live under theocracy. You'll end up with Christian nationalism. But that's all right, you little fucking 26-year-old. You don't feel like the election's important to me. They're not addressing the issues that I care about. Well, the New York Times wrote a story about the Harvard Youth Poll, which is a pretty good, well-regarded thing, a guy named John Della Volpe. And very recently, they gave youngsters the 15 most important issues. Clocking in at number 14 was student debt. You wouldn't know that if you read the press. Number 15 was the issue of Palestine. High on the list was abortion, was interest rates, was housing affordability, well, all of these other things. You are being insufficiently served by the commentariat, and to some extent, you're being insufficiently served through democratic messages. So my advice to tell these young people to get off your motherfucking ass and go vote, because you should vote like your entire future and the entire future of this United States depends on it, because quite frankly, it does. And that's not an exaggeration.
I mean, I promised you meltdowns, didn't I? But is that not? I want to play that on a loop as I'm going to sleep. I want that embedded in my cerebral cortex. During my REM sleep, I want that echoing in and out of my brain over and over again. God, that's beautiful. Honestly, I mean, I thought for a moment there, I felt like this is what I assume it's like to go to an OnlyFans page. It was almost that ecstatic. And also kind of dirty. Very dirty. How beautiful is that? Also, it's all the lie. You know, this is the guy whose claim to fame for the Bill Clinton campaign is it's the economy, stupid. Right? This is the guy. He knows what it takes to win a presidential election. He's done it twice. Okay? And he knows that when you're running as an incumbent, the most important question to ask is that great question Ronald Reagan asked in 1980 after 4 years of Jimmy Carter, which actually looks like a walk in the park compared to 4 years of Joe Biden. The question for everyone when you're judging an incumbent is, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago? That's not James Carville's message today. No, because he knows that if you ask that question, it's game over. He can't tout anything about the economy, stupid, because he knows how bad it is. So all they've got now is, you don't vote, we lose, then our democracy is over as we know it. Did you see how seamlessly, by the way, he pivoted from a conversation about our election and who wins the presidency, and he immediately said, and then Roberts and Alito and Thomas and the Heritage Foundation, then they're gonna be in charge. I hate to break this to you, but no matter who wins the White House, Thomas and Roberts and Alito and Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, they're still going to be on the Supreme Court. But see, they so politicize the Supreme Court and the judicial system that they think of it ingrained into a presidential election. Because that's how they think. That's their perspective. By the way, I'm only sorry that town hall media didn't make the list. Guys, we are falling down on the job. When he mentions Heritage Foundation, the next thing out of his mouth should be town hall, Red State, Hot Air, PJ Media, Bearing Arms, Twitchy, especially those lunatics at Twitchy. We're going to step it up. It's an election year. We're going to make his list next time. Those are beautiful meltdowns. They're wonderful. They're gorgeous. They're incredible to behold. And as you see them, it's fun to watch. And it's fun to point out exactly how they manipulate you and the media. The most important thing to bear in mind as you see this is, for their base and for some voters, that crap actually works. And that's why we stick together. We keep our eyes on the important issues that are in front of us. We focus, and we don't lose our focus. We keep our concentration. And we're going to see each other through this election, you and I together.